Continue silently. Page 41 and 42. And the well of life will be wounded and will close up the sky, so that there is no rain and the earth will yield no harvest. And you will be lost from the good land that the well of life is giving you. Put these words on your hearts, on your souls, bind them as a sign upon your hand, and let them dangle between your eyes. Teach your children to speak of them when you sit at home and when you go on your journeys. Page 45, 46. Page 47, as we head towards opportunity for redemption every day. We're past the solstice. The light's going to start to grow. The days are going to start to get longer. Maybe we'll make it through that channel of water to the other side. Mouth As we move deeper into prayer, we also move more deeply into the night, which sometimes can be frightening because night can feel like more of an ending than a beginning. Are we going to make it through? In Hashkivenu on page 49, we ask God to protect us as we move deep into the night and mine its treasures protected.
Into the night and our safe return home. May everyone experience that in the world. We know there are so many people who leave their homes and their safe return is not guaranteed. So we send our prayers out to them that they have returned home. I'm particularly thinking of girls who are trafficked all over the world. We pray for their safe return. Baruch atah Adonai haporeh sukat shalom aleinu that sukkah spread far and wide. Ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, all of the world's inhabitants. Ve'al, especially right now, Yerushalayim.
Please rise for Vishamru on page 52.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael, et HaShabbat, la'asot et HaShabbat, v'dotam b'rit olam.
The silent Amidah can be found on page 56 and following pages.
I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Gonna let it show.
In the summer of 1996, my husband and I went on our honeymoon to Turkey. And we spent the first few days in Istanbul. And I decided I wanted to find out something about my paternal grandmother, Rebecca Behar, who I barely knew because sadly she was mentally ill and my father tried to protect our family from her. So we called the office of the chief rabbi, and surprisingly enough, the chief rabbi answered the phone. And he told us to come right over. So my husband and I went right over to the office, this beautiful building of the chief rabbi, and we climbed a few stairs and we went through this long hallway, and we saw portrait after portrait of every chief rabbi that Turkey ever had. And unsurprisingly enough, they were all male and bearded. So my husband said to me, "You should tell him you're a rabbi." And I said, I don't think so. Having grown up in the traditional community of Syrian Jews in Brooklyn, kind of had me understand why I would not want to tell the chief rabbi that I was a rabbi. All the years that I was in rabbinical school at the Jewish Theological Seminary, and my parents would see their friends and they would ask, "Oh, how's Diane? What's she doing?" And I say, "Oh, she's studying. Oh, she's studying. Oh, she's studying." They never said what. It was like 6 years of blankness in my life. Finally, I got married, had children, and they had something to talk about. In any case, back to the office of the chief rabbi. So there we were sitting there, and we were speaking Hebrew. I was translating for my husband. And I first brought up my grandmother, and he said, basically, forget about her, she's dead. And then he started to talk about American Jewry and how worried he was about American Jewry. He kept saying, chalakim, chalakim, pieces, pieces, meaning that Ashkenazic Jewry really has divided itself into movements, and to him it was completely splintered, right? Orthodox Jews, Reform Jews, Conservative Jews, Reconstructionists, Renewal, secular Jews. In the Mizrahi community, it's different, right? Where I grew up, it's like one community. You know, people don't go to different synagogues. People have different levels of observance, but really share a belief system, share a worldview. So he's like scratching his head about how fragmented American Jews are. And finally, he gives us an example. He said a bunch of Reform Jews came to my office, and there were a few female rabbis in the group. And you know what I did? I threw them out of my office. And he was very proud of that. And meanwhile, I'm kicking my husband under the table. So I decided to keep the truth of who I was a secret. And with that, I felt like it was the best decision I could make at that moment because I wanted to continue the conversation, but I was feeling inauthentic, maybe a bit closeted, if I could use that term, and not dissimilar to how I felt in the Syrian Jewish community with my parents. I couldn't be my whole self. The Parsha this week by Yigash has a moment where Joseph reveals himself after keeping his identity hidden with his brothers for excruciating sort of episodes where he tests them and tortures them. So what's the story about? For those of you who are not familiar with the Joseph story or haven't seen Joseph and his, Technicolor dream coat or King of Dreams. So Joseph, as a young man, 17 years old, was a bit of a brat with tattletale on his brothers, and his father loved him more than all his other brothers in a kind of cruel way, gave him this beautiful coat of many colors to show his favoritism, and the brothers' jealousy and envy grew, and they threw him into a pit and almost murdered him, but instead decided to sell him into slavery, and he was sold into slavery in Egypt. So he was about 17, and I think the brothers didn't see him for another, 22 years. And what happened to Joseph in Egypt is complicated, but he became a very powerful man and became basically second to Pharaoh and managed the resources of the country as they went through 7 years of abundance and 7 years of famine. It is in the second year of famine that his brothers show up. And there he is, a sort of royal Egyptian man as far as they know, and they don't recognize him, but he recognizes them. And he says to them, I don't really believe you're honest men. And at some point he throws them into jail. And there's this extraordinary moment where they say, oh my God, what is happening to us? It's because we're guilty. It's because we threw our brother into a pit and he was crying out to us and we didn't hear the distress of his soul. That was in last week's Parsha. So Joseph overhears this and he begins to cry. He turns away and he cries. He keeps his feelings secret. But what's extraordinary is the brothers are remembering a moment that we're told in chapter 37, they stripped him of his coat, they threw him into a pit, and they sat down to eat. There was nothing about his cries. Now the brothers are remembering back, oh my God, what did we do? We're so guilty, right? We heard his cries, we didn't respond, and we sat down to eat. How depraved was that? So with their taking some responsibility, Joseph begins to feel. Joseph begins to cry. And Joseph's a crier. In Genesis, he cries no less than 8 times. And what happens in our Parsha this week? So this is the great reveal. And it happens at a moment where the brothers take even more responsibility, where Judah approaches him and tells him the story of their beleaguered father who lost his son, right? And this is the moment where Benjamin, Joseph's beloved by his father, younger son, right, is in danger of being imprisoned by Joseph, right? But the brothers don't know, again, that it's Joseph who's doing this. So they're in the same position. Their younger brother is endangered, about to be sent, so to speak, back into the pit, about to be enslaved, and Joseph's story is repeating itself. But this time, Judah does something different. He says, I told my father, I guaranteed him, I stood myself as a pledge and said, if Benjamin doesn't come back, I will serve myself as a slave, right? I guarantee his welfare. So in that, he was taking care of his old father in a way that he didn't do the first time with Joseph. He says, Ki avdecha arav et hana'ar me'im avi lemor, im lo avienu elecha v'chatati la'avi kol hayamim. For your servant pledged for the lad to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, I will be culpable for sin against my father all the days to come. Now Rashi, the 11th century French commentator, says something really interesting here. Says Judah understood that he had something at stake in the story and that he was inside the story in a way that his brothers were not. His brothers stood outside the story, and Judah understood finally the ramifications, the consequences of what would happen if they didn't stand up at this moment, right, and try to do things differently. And that's the moment that Joseph could not restrain himself anymore. V'lo yachol Yosef lehitapek l'chol hanitzavim alav. Yosef could no longer restrain himself in the presence of all who were stationed around him. And he called out, "Have everyone leave me." So no one stood when Yosef made himself known to his brothers, but he lets out a huge cry, and all of Egypt and all of the house of Pharaoh hears his anguished cry. And he says to his brothers, "Ani Yosef, I'm Joseph. Ha'od avi chai, is my father still alive?" So what allowed Joseph to be authentic finally after so much alienation and so much acting like the person he wasn't, as if he was not their brother? He finally said, "I am your brother." What allowed him to do that? And I think it was the brothers taking responsibility. And I think it was Judah taking even more radical responsibility. So I wonder, reading this story, how can we create a world where each of us can be more authentic, can really stand up and say who we are? I think it's a kind of double practice, a taking of responsibility for the world that we're living in, right? Really knowing like what we do matters. It's so easy to think another day, doesn't matter, it's almost over, tomorrow's a new day, right? It's so easy to think it doesn't matter, but it matters so deeply. And Judah finally got that, how deeply it matters. And also telling our story, owning our own identity, right? Owning our own identity more fully. So for example, Ani Dina, I'm Diane. I'm a rabbi. I'm someone who has struggled with depression. I am the mother of children with disabilities. Sometimes I'm scared. Sometimes I'm in love with life. Sometimes I'm full of joy. Sometimes I'm full of fear. What's your story? How can you more fully embrace your identity tonight, tomorrow, in 2023, an emerging song, a fledgling dance, right? A mixture of joy and despair. And when someone asks you, "How are you?" don't just say fine. Don't just say, "Oh, okay, I'm fine." Try to say something real. Create a world in which each of us can be authentic, fully ourselves.
I'm Naomi. I suffer from anxiety. And I was nervous for tonight.
You were nervous?
Yeah,
I'm shocked.
I was.
I was nervous about what you would think of me.
No.
Being nervous.
I was really nervous about tonight. And Shosh told me that she had me. So to the person next to you if you want to. Maybe you can share something in the chat that brings you to more of your authentic self. I'm coming out. I want the world to know. I've got to let it show. Hey, I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. Let it glow. I'm coming out. Let the world to know. Got to let it show.
Page 78.
Hey, I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. Behashevota,
Hashevota,
Elivabecha,
Elivabecha,
Ki Havaya,
Ki Havaya,
Ki Elohim,
Hi Elohim,
Behashevota,
Hashevota,
and
Mourners Kaddish is on page 116. We invite mourners to stand and all those who are in the practice of standing with the mourners. And if you'd like to say the name of the person that you're saying Kaddish for, we invite you to do that as well.
This past Monday, we got to meet here. So I'd like to say a prayer. I miss you, Jared.
May their memories be for a blessing.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
בעלמא דברך ירתה וימליך מלכותה לחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב לאמרו
Amen.
יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ועולמי.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה
בריחו.
לאלה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמא לאמרו
Amen.
יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
ואמרו ואמרו Amen.
Before we do Kiddush, some thank yous. First to Victor on sound. Thank you so much, Victor. To Shelley, who stood tonight as a greeter and all-around support. And we wish Jeff refuah shlema. He's suffering with a bad cold. To our rock stars, Naomi West and Kohenet Shoshana Jedwab. Who's the moderator on Zoom? We thank them too.
The Zoom angel.
Beautiful. Shall we
And the
rise?
whole maintenance crew, and we're
Oh,
going to
yes.
rise for Kiddush.
יום השישי ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל טבע
Page 88.
ויכול אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה וישבות ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה Vayivarech Elohim et Yom HaShvi, Vayikadesh oto, ki bo Shabbat mikol melachto, asher bara Elohim lasot. Savri.
Chaim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu rach haolam, asher kitshanu mitzotav v'ratza banu, v'shabbat kodsho v'yavahu ratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh bereshit. Ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh, zecher tziyat Mitzrayim. Ki banu v'acharta, v'yotanenu kidashta, im kol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha, be'ahava u'ratzon, inchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, mikadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
Amen.
This is really heavy.
I know,
Like
it is
I'm getting
heavy.
a workout holding this up. I feel like I need to do the other arm.
And before we hear our last song, I forgot to mention there's a kiddush downstairs if you'd like to have a little snack and hang out and talk to each other, tell your story.
Well,
I don't know.
you don't need pages.
No. I'll tell you in a second.
Okay. Well, we thought in the spirit of the day that we're in. Ose shalom bimromahu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Ose shalom bimromahu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, should all acquaintance be forgot, this help for old lang syne. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
everybody. See some of you tomorrow, and if not, happy
back tomorrow.
2023.
10 o'clock.